I'm Rebecca Bradley. Welcome to Bite Size Interviews. Today I'm talking to Cath Staincliffe. Welcome to the interviews, Cath.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi.
Hi. Cath is an award-winning novelist, radio playwright and creator of ITV's hit series Blue Murder, starring Caroline Quentin as DCI Janine Lewis. Cath has been shortlisted for the CWA John Creasy Best First Novel Award and for the Dagger in the Library. She was joint winner of the CWA Short Story Dagger in 2012. Letters to My Daughter's Killer was selected for the Specsavers Crime Thriller Book Club on ITV3 in 2014. Cath also writes the Scott and Bailey books based on the popular television cop show. She is a founding member of the Murder Squad and lives in Manchester with her family. Her series of standalone novels explore ethical dilemmas and what it's like for ordinary people to be suddenly caught up in the criminal justice system. Half the World Away, her latest title, is a thriller about an estranged couple reunited in a desperate search for their daughter missing in China. When they fall foul of the authorities, the couple are forced to turn detective, following their daughter's footsteps, Cath, and as the days pass, the fear that Laurie is lost for good grows ever larger. So, you're quite prolific there, Cath.
I've been at it a fair while, though.
Yeah. Your last few standalone novels are focused on victims of crime. What has drawn you into this side of crime writing when a lot of novels focus on the chase of the offenders?
Well, I have written quite a few books from the point of view of the detective, but I was really interested in exploring a different perspective and looking at stories where people are suddenly caught up in the criminal justice system. They're victims or they're bereaved, and they have to deal with everything that comes after a crime has been committed. And I wanted it to be stories that could happen to anybody, to any one of us. So they're sort of there, but for the grace of God go I sort of stories. And also they're stories that beg the question, what would you do? What might you do? Or how would you cope? So the first of that series, The Kindest Thing, was asking the question, what would you do if somebody who was terminally ill asked you to help them end their life? And if you agreed and were then charged with murder, how on earth would you deal with that whole, trial procedure while you were still grieving? Split Second, the second in the series, looked at the whole business of violence erupting in public. And do you get involved? Do you have a go? Do you try and help? Or do you stand back? And what might the consequences be of those choices? Letters to My Daughter's Killer was very much looking at whether it's possible to forgive when you've been the victim of, somebody who's been killed. You're a relative. Can you ever get beyond that trauma? Is it possible to move on? And as you said, Half the World Away, it's looking at that whole thing of, when our children are in jeopardy, when our children, albeit grown up, go missing, what on earth can you do as a parent, and what lengths will you go to in order to try and find them?
Have you managed to research such sensitive and delicate topics when a victim of crime is often left with scars of what happened to them for such a long time afterwards?
Yes. One thing I haven't done is speak to victims or relatives of victims directly. I need to make sure there's a clear line between my fiction and other people's real lives. Having said that, there's a lot of information available, obviously, in the media and online about some of these types of crimes and the aftermath that families suffer. I'm actually a really reluctant researcher. I don't enjoy research at all, but these novels, for me, it was really important that they were authentic and plausible. So I had to do the research. So, for example, with The Kindest Thing, I went into Style Women's Prison and spent some time with the women there who could tell me exactly what it was like to be behind bars and what it would be like for my character going into that situation as a middle-aged woman. For Half the World Away, I actually travelled to China to do the research because they I actually travelled to China to do the research, because much of the book unfolds in China, where Laurie goes missing. And I also spoke to a retired police officer who had worked on a case of somebody going missing abroad. And I looked at the websites for, helping people whose relatives have gone missing, and spoke to a Chinese professor of law who helped me with the legal side in China. So, quite a lot of research had to be done. I think, different books require different amounts of it, but it was very important for me to get it right.
And how does that research affect you personally?
Well, quite a lot of what I found out has shocked me and disturbed me, I think. But I think a lot of the impact of that goes into the book, goes into the writing. That's how I deal with that. I think the other thing that it's affected me is that it's actually solidified my views on certain issues. So, for example, the issue of assisted dying, which is examined in The Kindest Thing, having done the research and followed sort of certain cases through the courts and so on, I really felt that it was time for a change in the law here. And I became a patron of the charity Dignity in Dying, who are campaigning for that change. So, there has been sort of an impact on my personal life, but I don't get bound up emotionally to the extent that it damages me at all, because as a writer, that's what the work's there for, to explore those emotions.
But you obviously have had an effect, because with becoming a patron, that there has been some impact on you with the research. Do you think we hear the story of the victims enough in crime fiction that we read, and do you think as writers we owe the victims a more balanced view, or are stories just that? Are they just stories?
Well, I think stories are great. I think stories are really, really important. So, and I think both writers and readers should select and choose whatever stories they want to write and read, and just get on with it. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I think there's still scope for more stories from different perspectives, and I think generally crime fiction does that really well. I mean, I think we have got a very broad church of types of crime story, and I think this is an area that's probably growing. And one thing I've noticed recently is that nowadays quite a lot of our detectives are also victims. They come carrying loss and trauma and grief. They've lost a family member, or somebody's gone missing, or they've been the victims of, sort of prejudice or wrongful dismissal or whatever. And they come carrying quite a lot of emotional baggage, and quite often their personal stories can be bound up with the cases they are investigating. So I think there has been quite a shift towards seeing our detectives as more than just, knights in shining armour riding in to solve the mystery, and actually as more rounded and damaged individuals.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking to me today, Cath. It's been really interesting, actually. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.